Welcome to our cooking series, Jaba Kweda.
Wache!
Ani.
Bojo. Today's episode on Jaba Kweda, we are going to be making pork hocks.
Delicious. So we're going to make a pork hock stew in honor of Métis Celebration Week, which we're having at Laurentian, and we're very excited to try our hand at this stew. I've never made this before. Have you ever had this before?
I honestly thought we were cooking hoofs, so.
No hooves.
No hooves.
So for this delicious ragu or stew, you will need about 4 pork hocks.
A ragu!
It's a nice big stew, right? So you're going to need 4 pork hocks. You're going to need a lot of celery, about 3 carrots, and we're going to use about 3 onions for all of this. And that's going to show us our lovely pork hocks. There you can see them. So we're very excited. Bear with us. We are learning. So this is our first attempt.
So these are the pork hocks?
These are pork hocks. They're feet.
Okay.
So this is the one piece. Yeah. So this wouldn't have been like the best cut for the elite people, right? But
so AKA some poor food.
Some poor food, but realistically, you want to use every part of the animal.
Yeah, of course, 100%. The Indigenous way, right?
And there's lots of really flavorful meat in the feet and in the head, which is another fan favorite. But, you know, back in the day, you needed lots of calories to work in the bush and to get through a cold winter, but we don't really need that anymore, do we?
Well, you know, we still got to eat.
We still got to eat.
I'm very excited to try this. I have never had pork hock stew before. I've skinned a lot of animals. I've never actually skinned like with actual skin like this. So I'm very interested to see the process in this.
So the first thing we're doing is taking the skin off. And again, you know, back in the old days, you would put the whole foot in. It would probably be a bit salted, but we're going to cut down on some of this fat and we're going to use this to make some pork rinds later. So
who doesn't like a good pork rind?
Delicious and fatty and crispy and salty. So the first thing we're doing is removing that skin. And like we said, if you wanted to do like a head cheese or something like that, you would boil the whole thing because you really need this lard to have a healthy
disclaimer.
diet.
Head cheese has nothing to do with cheese.
Yes, but head cheese is made with the head and the feet of the pork. So you, in that case, would boil the head till all that delicious fat and meat comes right off. So the first thing we're doing is skinning this, and we're going to use this skin and this fat to grease our pot so that we can start browning our onions and making some nice base flavors for our stew.
Life hack, you don't got butter, just use some fat. So we're just finishing the process of taking the skin off. I thought that we should show you guys.
So note to self, get a really good sharp knife, right? So that you want to make sure that your knife is nice and sharpened because it's real slippery to be removing, but this is a good one. Not getting her knife.
And exactly like taking off a hide of an animal.
So bit by bit, and all of this lovely white stuff under the skin is all that nice fat that's going to help us get our stew cooking, and also will give us some really nice pork crackle afterwards.
You know what? The more the fat, I find the better the taste.
Yes, with salt. Okay, that's my thing. I really like salty fat.
So what's next?
So we have removed the pork skin. It's in our pot, rendering a little bit, so we dissolve a little bit of that fat to grease our pot. And now we're going to get to the veggies. So for every good base, you need lots of onions, celery, carrots, and the spices we're using today are cloves, cinnamon, salt and pepper, nutmeg, and dry mustard.
Never without our nutmeg. Watch how fast we chop. So the amount of time it took me to peel 2 carrots, Em has finished basically all of the onions and the celery.
Do you hear that?
Am I chewing?
While you're chewing, do you hear? Do you hear something else?
The skin is, I don't know the word for it.
Bubbling.
Bubbling.
We can hear the fat now because it's a little bit liquefied. You can definitely hear that the fat is ready. So we're going to take the skin out, and we're going to have this juicy, flavorful fat at the bottom. And we're going to start by roasting and caramelizing the onions.
Perfect.
And then we're going to slowly add in the celery till it smells really good in here. And then we're going to brown our pork hocks. Okay, so we're not adding any liquid right now. We're kind of browning all of the elements to build up those flavors.
You got to get a nice flavor base first.
Always, especially for a stew.
So, fun fact, I don't know if you guys know that there's a thing called cloves. I've seen this in recipes before, and I didn't know what it was. I thought it was talking about cloves of garlic. So for those of you out there who are like me, there is this. These are cloves.
They look like little nails. In French, you actually call it a clou.
Get up there.
Yeah, let's get up here and take a
look. Up a little more.
There you go. So it looks like a little nail, and so sometimes it's ground, and you can have it ground, and we just have the whole one. So we're going to kind of shove these into the meat to flavor some of that meat. Can I get a couple more, actually?
Yeah, of course, please.
And I've also put some salt.
Can I put some in?
Sure.
Is
Right into the meat as much as you can. It's going to be hard to go through the fat. Oh, and you can kind of see how that opens up. So it's like little sections of meat, lots of fat in between. So this is why this is so delicious. And it breaks apart really well if you let it simmer for quite a while. So we've salted the meat. And you want to leave it at like room temp before you start cooking it. Salt, cloves, and we're going to put...
Any more?
No, that's enough. That's enough, I think.
So after I turned it off, just said, I'm going to redo the ones you just did. So now we're going to be making pork rinds. Emily is just going to be slicing the pork skin.
This is not easy. You need a really good knife. You see lots of fat still on there. So we rendered a little bit of that into our pots, but there's still lots on there. So we're going to cut that into reasonable pieces. And we're going to add oil, salt,
and pepper.
Pepper.
See, this is why you keep me around. So I did the most important jump of all. I grabbed the canola oil for our pork cutlets. What are we calling this?
Pork rinds.
Pork rinds.
Pork crisps.
Crisps. Grinds.
So I really never made this before. I feel like you can't mess up pork fat. It's got to be really hard messing this up. But I figure lots of salt is in order.
Right? Salt it up.
A little bit of oil.
A little bit? Is this me?
Yeah. Give it
a little drizzle.
Couple splashes. We don't measure.
Is that good?
Oh, even more. Yeah, a little more.
Bam!
I think that's
the whole thing.
Trademarked. Okay, so we'll add a little bit more seasoning to this, a little bit more pepper, and it's going in the oven at, I want to say 350. We're going to start it off slow to render the rest of that fat, and then we're going to turn it up to get it nice and crispy.
What is render for those of us who may not know?
Render just means warming up the meat or the fat until it liquefies. So like when you're cooking your bacon, all of that fat is being rendered through heat.
Fabulous.
Ooh. So the onions are getting there, they're softened. You want to caramelize them. So that means that you want to kind of burn off some of the water in the vegetable so that it gets a bit sweeter. So the longer and slower you do this, the more delicious it will be. So we're about there. And I'm going to add the celery, and we're going to do the same kind of thing with the celery.
Perfect.
To build up those flavors. Look at her work.
Work.
Watch those fingers. So Nat is now cutting up the carrot, which is the next to go into our big pot to slowly warm and get a bit sweeter. So once we have all our veggies in there and they're steamy and a little bit soft, great taste tester. We're gonna add the pork's feet, the pig's feet, to steam a little bit and get those flavors working. And then basically you add a bit of spices, you top it up with liquid, and you let it boil and boil and boil away. So we're gonna watch Nat work now. Knife safety is very important, and you want to make sure you're always working with an adult.
I got my adult right here.
So we're just gonna take a little look at our.
She would hold it. I'm sorry. Oh, I can see it from over here. Woo! Girl, look at those grinds.
We're almost there. Almost there. So we want that to be a little bit crispier. That's what I like anyways. I'd rather be a little bit crispier. So we're going to leave that in for probably another 15 minutes. And then Nat's going to taste. She'll be our little guinea pig and she'll have a taste test.
Watch
Ani.
Bonjour. Today on Jabakwe Da, we are going to be doing our second part of our pork hock stew, not stew. And Emily has something to show us from remnants from yesterday.
So we got our stew boiling with the pork hocks in there, and then we let it cool in the fridge overnight. So you might want to do this just to remove some of the extra fat. So this is what I scooped off the top. You could leave it in there if you're really interested in having a really high calorie soup, but we removed a little bit. So you could give this to your pup.
Buck would love that.
Not too much because they'll get a little bit sick, but you can add this to a different recipe if you want. Completely up to you what you want to do with this. And then here we have the lard that we saved from our pork rinds. So if you recall making those tasty skin, crispy pieces of pork.
So good.
And then we saved all that fat, and this is lard. So you could put this on your toast if you had a cold winter's day that you wanted to be ready for, or cook your eggs in it, or anything at all that you want. But it's good to save these things and just reuse it somewhere else, right?
So for our final touch on our pork hock stew, we're going to be making some mini meatballs.
And so for this, you'll want about 1/4 of lean meat, 3/4 of pork. So this is what we're doing today. You could replace your lean meat. You could use beef, moose, or deer. Completely up to you. So we're using beef and pork today.
I'm going to wash my hands. I just touched my hair.
Good. You always want to be washing your hands constantly.
And put my hair back.
So combining all of your meat in one very large bowl, and we're going to be adding these lovely spices here. So again, we have dry mustard seed, we have nutmeg, we have cloves, cinnamon, salt, and pepper. You'll also be needing eggs, 2 eggs. If you want to replace that with flaxseed, you could do that. If you don't have eggs.
Interesting. Flaxseed.
Flaxseed is a good binder as well. And you'll need about a cup of breadcrumbs and about a cup of milk. So this will make a nice texture for your meatballs. You could also add some vegetables finely chopped into your meatballs if you want.
That onion though.
Always onion, right? So we're going to get to mixing.
Bam.
Beautiful. So Nat is actually quite a meatball expert, right? So she knows what kind of texture you need. So it's up to you how dense you want to make them. But we're going to get to rolling. Good job, Nats. Nat's washing her hands because she worked very hard making all of these beautiful meatballs. So we have about 2 trays, and that depends on the size that you're going to make them. And again, that's your preference. So they're not exactly the same size, and that's what you want in life. A little bit of diversity in your stew. So we're going to cook these at about 350. We'll say about 25 minutes. So we cook them in the oven, and then they go into the stew to gently boil away and get the flavors going in there as well. So this is the final step. Cooking the meatballs. The last thing that we need to do as well is to brown our flour. Nat, do you brown your flour?
I've never even heard of browning flour.
No. So, you know, like cookie dough tastes so good, right? And some of that flavor that you're actually getting in raw cookie dough is like this raw flour flavor. So what we're going to do here is gently brown it. So you're kind of cooking your flour to add a bit of dimension, or a bit of dimension to your stew. So you're going to put this on the stove top.
No water?
Just no water. No water. So you want to toast it, basically. It's going to come a light brown color. You want to mix it often. Keep it as low as you can to do it nice and slow and gentle. You don't want to burn your flour. And this is going to go into our stew, one of the last steps. So we're almost there. But it smells good in here.
Oh my God, it smells amazing.
Yeah, so we're well on our way. We'll deserve a good meal after all of this.
So we've added our meatballs into our stew now, and Emily went fishing in our stew.
So we removed the vast majority of the bones from the pork hocks. There's maybe 1 or 2 left in there. So whoever gets that in their bowl has to do the dishes. That's a nice rule for your family. But we removed some of these. You could leave them in there if you want it, but we're going to use these. Nat's going to use some of the marrow. She's going to eat some of the marrow, and we're actually going to make this we're going to use it as plant fertilizer. Yeah. So you don't need to throw anything away. You can use it somehow or put it in your compost. Yeah.
So that marrow is really good and nutritious for you. So she suggested getting a straw and sucking it out, but you can also use a knife and take it out as well.
So it's nice and rich, very rich. So we're really at the last portion now where we want to thicken up our stew. The meatballs are now boiling after being roasted in the oven, so they're going to get even more flavorful. And we're going to add a thickener. So if you remember, we did our
show them how brown it got.
This is our brown flour. So it's not very, very dark, but you want it to get a couple shades darker, and you roast it nice and slow on the oven or on the stove top. So now we're going to, if you put this right in your stew, it's going to get all clumpy and real nasty. So we're going to add it to some cold water.
Make sure it's cold.
And we're going to whisk this until it's nice and smooth.
Jello's hot! Jello's hot! Jello's hot! Oh my God, make sure. Okay, sorry about that.
I think that's really good to teach us all the kitchen safety that we need to know.
Yeah. Make sure the pot is not hot before you grab it.
Hold the handle, and you can pour the rest of that right in here. When you're working with your children in the kitchen, you want to make sure that the instructions are really clear. How are your hands, man?
They're good. I ran them under some cold water.
Be careful, guys. Be very careful. Yeah. Now we've mixed this, and it looks nice and thin, but we're going to add this into our stew, and it's going to thicken up nice and slow. So we're keeping it on a low simmer, and you can let this simmer for quite a while. The longer it simmers, the tastier it's going to get. So we're going to let that simmer a little bit, and then we're going to show you our finished product, and that's going to taste it for you and give us some feedback.
Yes, no more stove or pots for me.
No more, only flavor.
Watch it.
We're done. It only took 2 days.
It looks great though. Smells even better.
So we let it simmer until the flour mixture really thickened up the stew, and that's our official taste tester. We have other people that are going to test for us as well, but you're the first one.
I gotta get a little bit of everything. Get that meatball, get that carrot, the onion, get a bit of that pork.
All right, have a little taste.
That's good. No, that's good, people. Definitely worth burning my hands for.
Absolutely, that's really good. I think it's like one of the ultimate comfort foods, right?
It really is.
You could put maybe mashed potatoes on the side with that, or dumplings. Maybe some scone on the side. You need some kind of carb to go with this, I think.
Soak it up. Sorry, I'm just gonna keep eating it. It's really good. There's no stopping now.
So our stew is done, but I think maybe next time we'll have to explore some carbs to go along with that, whether it's fry bread or scone or something like that. Well, I'm glad that Nat enjoys it. I also enjoy it. It's tastes like my mom or my grandma used to make. So very pleased. I hope that you enjoyed this. And I hope that you try this out as much as you possibly can. And you want to have fun with it. I think you can be creative and substitute ingredients if you want.
Remember, be safe.
Be safe. Be careful with your knives. Be careful with your heating implements. And always cook with an adult.
Thank you for joining us on Jabak Kweda.